Hi, I hope you're having a great Wednesday. Back with the Friendship War, and we get to figure out what's going on with these buttons. Chapter 12, Showdown. I hurry out to my locker in the hall, and I know I'm not being logical, but I don't care. I want that pinwheel button. From my show and tell in social studies that day, I remember how Brooke really loved the specialty buttons, the ones in all the realistic shapes, especially the animals. She wants to become a veterinarian. So that's the bag I grab from my locker. And it's not like it's going to give away any secrets either. Everyone already knows I have some buttons like this. Back in the room, Brooke is trying on one of Ellie's ribbon bracelets. I can tell that she really likes it. And Ellie already has the pinwheel button in her hand, so I might be too late. 5 other girls are watching the action, but from a respectful distance. And usually I do the same, like whenever we watch a movie together, I always let Ellie pick the one that she wants. But not this time. I move in closer, almost between them, and then I say something, just an observation, as if I'm talking about the weather. Those are some fancy buttons I brought to social studies that day, the ones shaped like dogs and cats and horses and stuff. I've been thinking about how some of these would look on a bracelet. Ooh, that's a great idea. Brooke is setting my small plastic bag. And Ellie? Without even looking, I can tell that her mouth is hanging wide open. She's speechless, but I know that won't last for long. So I start pulling out buttons. Yeah, like this kitten, and this robin, and this pony, and this Scotty dog, and then 3 or 4 more, maybe on a yellow ribbon. I think that might be really nice, almost like a charm bracelet. Brooke is nodding. So, do you want to trade some of those? I say, maybe, but for what? I mean, these are pretty amazing buttons, and they're almost antiques, too. Like a cobra, Brooke snatches her pinwheel button right out of Ellie's finger and hands it to me. I'll trade you that for 8 of yours. I get to pick. Deal? The word deal is on my tongue, but before I can say it, Ellie finds her voice. Actually, Brooke, you and I already made a trade. You took my bracelet and put it on, and then you handed me that button. So, that's a trade. Plus, I was kind of hoping that you'd come over for a sleepover this weekend. I got a spool of this amazing stretching cord, and I thought you could help me try out some new ideas for necklaces. Ellie hasn't even glanced at me. The full power of her smile and her popularity is focused on one thing, poor Brooke. And I can tell Ellie's charm is working, exactly the way it worked on me, more times than I can count. Also, I'm pretty sure that Ellie has never invited Brooke over for a sleepover. Not until now. So, this invitation, it's a bargaining tool. This is sleepover blackmail, which seems totally unfair, a lot more unfair than me having all of these buttons that Grandpa gave me. But right now, the fact is, I have the pinwheel button clamped in my fist, and I'm not giving it up. I look Ellie right in the eye, I keep my voice calm. And friendly, too. Which isn't easy, but I'm not using smiles or popularity like she just did. Only sharp, cold logic. Sorry, Ellie, but if Brooke didn't say deal to you, then it's pretty clear she was still thinking about trading. And she did say deal to me, and I'm now saying it back. Deal. So that's that. There are 7 or 8 kids around us now, and they're nodding in agreement with me. Before Ellie can say one word, I hand my bag of buttons to Brooke. You can take your time picking out the ones you want, okay? Brooke gives me sort of a worried smile. Okay. If I had known that this was going to be tough on Brooke, I might not have jumped in. And if it hadn't been for Ellie's little sleepover trick, I might have backed away. But it feels like I'm doing the right thing here. I reach over to Brooke's wrist, unhook the red ribbon bracelet, and hold it out to Ellie. This is yours. She glares at me, and the edges of her nostrils are flared out wide, like a horse that's about to kick someone's head off. I've seen this look before, but it's never aimed at me. I feel like I'm going to shiver, and during that split second, I almost hand over Brooke's button and start apologizing. Almost. Ellie grabs her bracelet and she turns away. The first bell rings. Walking to my desk, I don't even glance at the pinwheel button. I just slip it in the front pocket of my jeans, and I gulp once or twice. Because the stuff that just happened, most of it, wasn't even about buttons. Chapter 13. Ellie's Table. Did I just lose my best friend because of a button? It's a good question. Also scary. Sitting in homeroom Friday morning, I don't know the answer. I mean, I do know how much Ellie hates it when she doesn't get her way, and I just made that happen. So, does she hate me now? As I keep thinking about this, I have to ask myself a second question. And this one's even scarier. Has Ellie ever been my best friend for real? And what does that even mean? With the math question, an answer is correct or incorrect, true or false. What if I ask, is 2 plus 2 4? The answer is yes. 2 plus 2 is 4. And that's the end of it. The questions about Ellie and me, I don't see an end. The best thing about school today is that there's no chance to sit around and make myself unhappy. Mrs. Lang has us doing a combined math and science unit about measurement and averages. And during first period science, we each get a wooden polygon to measure. Then in fourth period math, we're going to have to work together and find the average surface area of all of them. Mrs. Lang has only been a teacher for 1 year before this one, Dad told me. He checks on things like that. He's a structural engineer, which means he does the math to make sure the building and bridges don't fall down, which is probably part of why he is such a worrier. The first week or so I wasn't going to be able to deal with Mrs. Lang. She was always tense, but I'm starting to understand her. Mostly, I think she's nervous because she's still pretty new at her job. She's got this lesson planning program on her laptop, and I've seen it open on her desk. She has to describe what she's going to teach about in both science and math and plan out every minute of every class. Mr. Porter tiptoed into the back of the room one day during math, and then again 2 days later during science. I can tell Mrs. Lang doesn't like it when the principal comes, so when that happens, I always ask her a hard question. Mrs. Lang is really smart, and when she starts explaining stuff, it's like she forgets that Mrs. Porter is even in the room. First period goes by fast, and the principal doesn't arrive, and I'm feeling relaxed because Ellie is not here. It's almost lunch before Brooke gets a chance to give me back my plastic bag, which is good timing. Because of my trade with her, tons of kids now know that I've got a bunch of nice buttons to bargain with. Lunchtime could be good. And maybe I can talk with Ellie and explain how I went wild about buttons, and sort of apologize. Hank catches me in the hall outside the cafeteria. So, did you hear about Ellie's table? What do you mean? What table? Ellie's table in the cafeteria. She doesn't want you to sit there anymore. Oh, that's all I can think of to say. I have been right next to Ellie at lunch every school day since my first week of second grade. It never occurred to me that I was sitting at her table. But of course, what Hank said is true. All the time I thought I was eating lunch with my best friend. I was just a temporary guest. And Ellie just shredded my invitation. Hank gives me a cough and shifts from one foot to the other. We better go get in line before they run out of pizza, okay? Right. As we walk into the cafeteria, I feel a blush creeping up my neck, and it makes me mad. I've got nothing to be embarrassed about. Not one thing. But I still feel like kids are watching me, especially from Ellie's table. And it already seems like the most natural thing in the world to call it Ellie's table, Ellie's table, Ellie's table. But I grab hold of my thinking and I force it to move out of Ellie, which is a lot like wrestling. Then Hank rescues me just by talking. I guess you already figured this out, but I'm really getting into buttons, which sounds not so nice because half the kids in the school are into buttons right now, except I think it's just a fad with most of them. But I've been doing a lot of research, and I think buttons are almost as interesting as butterflies and moths. And there might even be more different kinds. Pretty amazing for something made by humans, because there are more than 180,000 different species of lepidopterans. Lepidopterans is a scientific name for butterflies and moths. Hank has already educated me. I mean, I really love science, and he's a super wonk if he gets interested in something. Regular math and the kind of science study we do in school, he's mostly bored by it. But archaeology, Hank's an expert, especially about the Incas and the Mayas. Mars exploration and how orbits and gravity work, total geek. Climate change, seriously nuts on this topic. And now buttons, or is it buttonology? I'm researching for a plate of pizza when someone taps me on the shoulder, a 5th grade girl that I don't know. You're Grace, right? Yes. Good, because I heard you have some great buttons. Can I see them? Sure, but first I have to get my lunch. All right, sorry. I just didn't want them to all be gone because I've got some that I want to trade if you want to. My name is Sarah. Well, you can be first in line, I promise. I mean, that as a joke. But within 2 minutes after I find a place to sit near the back of the cafeteria, Sarah and 3 other kids are standing near my table in a line, watching me eat. I've got a big bag of buttons on the table, but the pizza tastes great, and I'm not going to rush. I'm not going to look at Ellie's table either. Not once. Hank starts poking through the bag. You know, most of these buttons are called celluloid. Celluloid? Yeah, it's pretty much the first plastic. And these buttons are old, too. Probably from 1930 or so. They're what button collectors call vintage. This one with the carrot on the yellowish background, it's another kind of early plastic called bakelite. This one button would probably sell on eBay for at least $10, maybe twice that. I got a look at the 8 buttons Brooke picked up, probably worth $15 or $20, easy. I pull out the pinwheel button in my pocket. What about this one? It looks like a celluloid, great design and pretty old. Might sell for $5 or $6, which means I lost money on my trade with Brooke. But I don't care, I love my pinwheel. As I take a drink of milk, I realize something. Hank didn't have to come sit with me. Also, Hank didn't have to tell me this. He could have offered me trade after trade, picking out my best buttons. Now Ellie, if she knew what Hank knows, she would have snapped up every great button I own and never thought twice about it. She would have grabbed up all the... I hit the brakes in my head. Do I actually know what Ellie would have done? Of course not. And it's bad science to jump to a conclusion like that. It's also mean. Still, it's a decent theory, because that saying pretty is as pretty does. It also works with friendly. And Ellie banning me from her table, not friendly. I think of all the times I let Ellie have her own way, never complaining, never letting it bother me. Then I push it back, and bam, cut off. So yeah, Hank. As I turned to look at him sitting where he was studying a celluloid button, shaped like a fish, suddenly I'm thinking the clearest thought I've made all day. Maybe I don't actually need a best friend right now. Maybe I just need a better one. Alright, chapter 14 for tomorrow is called Half-Cease. So, have a great day. Enjoy your Wednesday.